Hey, this is Andy Powell of Wishbone Ash, and you're listening to the Total Kit Car on YouTube.
Hi, welcome to the Total Kitcar YouTube channel. My name's Steve Holt, editor of TKC Mag and totalkitcar.com, and welcome along to another episode of our History File series. I guess most of the cars and subjects that we like to cover here, and indeed will continue to cover, barely, even with 112 videos, I think, at the time of recording this in September 2025. If I say there's certain things, if I say them, just humour me. I mean, I'm just in magazine mode always, forever and a day. So if I say readers, writing, you know, I mean viewers, listeners, and recordings and video, whatever. But anyway, humour me. But I guess all the companies that we cover will be underdogs, and that's the way we like it. We like to, the industry by its very nature, the kit car industry is full of wonderful underdogs. Some bigger than others, but we also I like very much to highlight the ones that got away, in a good sense. And I think I've got one today, really. Good honest kit car company. The car was called the Jackal. Yeah, we can have all the day of the Jackal jokes. That's all good, but quite an intriguing little thing. It wasn't a massive seller, but in the mid-80s it was there all the time, from about 83 to 87. It was never present, or the company behind it were never present at all the shows, and there were quite a few in those days. So we'll come to the history basically now. It's not a replica, but it was heavily, if you Google, or indeed you might not need to, because you might well be familiar with a 30s, I think it arrived in 1930, a Mercedes-Benz Mannheim W30, I think it was. It certainly inspired the Jackal, definitely not a replica though. But the car itself, the Jackal, was created by a lovely bloke, a Bixhill-on-Sea school teacher, very talented man, ex-art school graduate, a chap called Peter Fairhurst. And he traded initially, when he created the little Jackal, which was Vauxhall Viva based, by the way. He traded under the Minion Cars name, and he had little premises right next door to his school, which was, I think, in Ashdown Road, Bexhill-on-Sea. And two guys, now I'm going to have to remember here. Colin Sayers was one, Andrew Carey was the other, who kind of handled the stuff. Sending out brochures and such. We used to have brochures in those days, and people would often send £1, I think, to manufacturers, and hope to receive a nice A4, maybe 4-page glossy affair in the post within a week or so. But anyway, Peter was a metalwork teacher, and he built several specials way before he ever got involved with the Jackal. One was, he showed me a picture once of one based on a Riley 1.5, a very tidy looking car. It also, I think, built an invalid carriage type car, disabled people's car. And again, this is all sketchy, but I think he built at least one 6-wheeler, and I think he was also into electric cars way back when. I think they realised, or Peter realised, that he wasn't commercially minded. He, much like most companies in this industry, run by engineers really, who are the best will in the world, don't profess to be salespeople or marketing people. So I think Peter had been surprised by the response to his little car, which was pretty positive. It got a good public response, critical response in the kit car press of the day. And so I think he realised that he needed to accelerate with the marketing, I think. So I don't know how he knew this guy, but in 1985 he teamed up with an Eastbourne, Lockbridge Drove in Eastbourne, which is basically, still is in Eastbourne. TKC Towers is about 12 miles from Eastbourne. Lockbridge Road is still very much, I guess, car dealer alley. But Peter ran a general, I think, repairs business, and from memory, I think he sold a few second-hand cars as well. This is where it gets confusing. Peter Gowland. So I don't know how he and Peter Fairhurst knew each other, but certainly they teamed up in 1985. And the car would, from that point on, be marketed and sold by Peter Gowland. Kit sales were handled by him too, because he had the facilities to do that. And they changed the company name to Imperial. I've got to think about the end. Definitely Imperial. It was Imperial Specialist Vehicles or Imperial Special Vehicles, something along those lines. They didn't muck about. They had an official launch as well under the Imperial Jackal name. I don't know why they went. There's plenty of places they could have launched it in East Sussex, West Sussex, but they chose to go to a place called Wingfield Castle in Diss in Norfolk, and they had an official launch there, which was pretty big potatoes for a kit car company in those days. But I remember this. I jumped forward a bit. Peter Fairhurst, when he was trading as Minion Motors. I think I've said it before on some of these videos, and certainly said it in the magazine. Some of the kit car manufacturers of the 80s and 90s had some fantastic strap lines for their adverts, and Minion had a brilliant one. It was I remember it as a big strap line across the top of the page or half page. You don't need a fortune to become a Minion heir. He's here all week. Boom boom. I did like that one. It did make me chuckle. Still makes me chuckle. Soon after they became Imperial Specialist Vehicles, they also began to offer a Ford called Tina based, I think, based Jackal, which I think is what it needed in terms of public reception. I think everyone knew Cortinas and such like, and I think the industry's really been dominated by Ford mechanicals over the years, as you know if you've been around for a while. Chassis fabrication, though, was still handled. It was contracted to a Hastings-based company called Winstone Engineering, and it was a rugged ladder frame, 90mm by 50mm by 3mm steel square tube, I believe. And the bodies were always made by, they were once one of the master companies of our game, FI Glass, and they were based in Edenbridge in Kent, which sounds like quite a long way from Eastbourne, but it's not really. It's about 35 miles if you go the acknowledged route via B roads, so it wasn't too bad. The initial, I think the preferred donor when the car was only or solely Vauxhall based was a Forenza, usually the 1256cc unit. The car, I think the Jackal used the dashboard from that car or from a Vauxhall as well. But of course, when the Ford Pinto came on stream, I think that the Ford base kit was only 60 quid more expensive, but I must confess I don't know what the kit price was in 1985, but I do know that the Ford kit was £60 more. There was a convertible version that arrived as well called the Sports. Wasn't just a case of chop the roof off and oh look, we got a convertible. Fairhurst had given some serious thought to that. I think he's now the late Peter Fairhurst. I'm sad to say. And I think he might have stepped away from the project before the project was sold, if you understand what I mean. But certainly post Jackal, post Jackdaw, I must talk about the Jackdaw van as well. But Peter Fairhurst continued to design cars, continued to teach until his retirement age, I guess. And he continued building electric vehicles, and he also did a three-wheeler. And I think notably in 1990 he won the prestigious BP Build a Car competition, but I don't know for what or who, what or where. But it enjoyed quite a good sort of spell, as I said, in sales, until it didn't. It's a weird one, that, but that's kind of where we are with it. Oh, I do apologise. There goes there's a Merlin. Talking about classics, there goes a Spitfire from Digging Hill. Anyway, lovely. Nothing like being thrown off your thread by it, but I'll forgive a Merlin anything it needs. But there you go. The project was sold in 1988, surprisingly to, well, it might surprise you, to Eagle. Eagle Cars. Not an obvious one for them to take over, but they took it over. They did, but they didn't do much with it. And before long, it ended up at back in East Sussex with a company called Jackal cars. He had the project from about 95 to 1998. He was based in Bixhill-on-Sea, and he was an industrial sign maker, Ken Wheatley. He might have sold a couple of kits, I believe, but he was responsible for Ford Sierra donor option. Although I do have a back in my mind, this is all kind of quite sort of cloudy now with this. That Rob Budd at Eagle might have began that project or that conversion to Sierra, but certainly Ken marketed it. Now I believe it went out of production for a couple of years until it did have one final flourish, if that's the correct description. Company called Cotswold Kitcars, although that didn't last long either, really. But by the time it went to the great kitcar graveyard in the sky, the Jackal had achieved 42 sales, which isn't bad. And incidentally, Cotswold Kitcars had the project on the market or available for sale in kit form, I think 2001, 2002, and that was kind of their, as I said, flourish. The Jackal Sports, that may well have sold more. I've heard conflicting stories about that. It might have arrived later, but I'm not so certain about that, because Rob Budd once told me it had sold 50 of the Sports, which makes it a better seller than the standard car. As I said, I'm not sure about that, because if you do see one these days, and they still are about, and it shows that they were probably a good kit, because I've seen a few and they still look really, really good. And bearing in mind they're 40 odd years minimum, over 40 years old now, some of them. But if I do see one, it tends to be the fixed head version. So I'm going to kind of tentatively say that the Jackal Sports sold 50, with the standard car 42. And then of course it lent itself quite well to a van conversion, and that, as I said, was called the Jackdaw. And it did need a little bit of revision from Peter. I think Peter Gowland did that one, but 7 of those, I believe, were sold. But by 1987, really and truly, the bulk of the sales had been done. It had a brief stay at Eagle Cars, but I think it was just a lodger there, even though they had that project for a good 6-7 years. But I think Rob Budd did that a few times with various projects that he chose not to market for whatever reason. I mean, I believe, and I know, in fact I know, for example, he bought the Henson, as well as Hugo Henson's Henson M30, he also did a really good Cobra 427 replica. And Rob bought that. And for whatever reason, Rob didn't market it, and I know for certain that the moulds were chopped up, which is, I think, not good. But for whatever reason, he chopped the moulds up. So Rob was kind of known, shall we say, for taking in waifs and strays and keeping them in his workshop. It had the final sort of hoorah with Jackal Cars and Ken Wheatley, and then it was again shelved. And then had one final little flourish with Cotswold Kitcars, and that kind of, maybe, if those numbers that I've given were right, it sold all types 99. I think that might be too many, to be quite truthful with you. As ever, I suppose knowledge of the industry gives me a pretty good accurate handle on sales numbers. Most manufacturers are straight down the line. There's others that obviously follow the stickleback was the size of a massive pike, and they exaggerate a little bit. But the people that have told me those figures are pretty reliable. But anyway, it's another video that I hope you enjoy, or voiceover that I hope you enjoy. We've got a few. I'm writing. There we go again. I'm recording this in September 2025, mid-September, and we are about to do a few factory visit videos. Which, if I really wasn't the intention for me to do those, but we're going to have a go because we're going to look at some notable things, and we think it'll be a natural development for the channel. Please be aware though that it won't be done on £50,000 video cameras and sound engineers and people with booms or whatever they are. Are they the booms? Are they the microphone on a big stick? I think they are, aren't they? Anyway, we won't have any of that. It'll be me with a little video camera that I probably got on Temu. Don't tell anybody. And yeah, me talking to whoever. But we'll see how we get on with those. But anyway, thanks for visiting. I hope you're having a good day. If you could, if you haven't already, subscribe, hit the subscribe button. Be very grateful. Look forward to welcoming you next time. Steve Hole, over and out. See you down the road.